As I sit here having finally completed the main story arc of Fallout 4, I've come to realise one thing. That game is bloody huge. However, after over 70 hours of play, plus 40 levels, and a copious amount of spent ammunition, there's still more to do. There's new locations awaiting my arrival, NPCs are awaiting my interaction, and quest chains awaiting completion. Of course, having all that content just doesn't mean anything unless it's engaging, entertaining, and, stable. But even after all that time, I still want to be wandering the wastelands of Boston. It's a testament to the overall quality of the writing throughout the game more than anything, which is good considering Skyrim's main arc suffered in that regard. I mean, come on, I can remember the Dark Brotherhood subplot, but the Journey of the Dovahkiin? Nope. The fact that there are a number of paths to progress the main story, and how many of those side missions weave in and out of it, helps achieve this. This, of course, is just one of the reasons why Fallout 4 succeeds as an RPG, but is it the slice of perfection that we were hoping it would be? Well, it gives it a damn good try. For those of you who have avoided the hype train or have been living in an actual vault for the last year, Fallout 4 puts the player in the role of a pre-war survivor of Vault 111. The transition from hometown Americana, delivering a memorable sequence that gives us a glimpse of a world that we haven't really seen much of, to the cockroach-filled hellscape, shows that Bethesda's showmanship is on fine form once again. Admittingly, the E3 press conference numbed the effectiveness of the sequence, especially in comparison to the impact of Fallout 3's surprising first hour, but it was still a strong opening. Upon entering the post-apocalyptic wasteland based on Boston, the Fallout fan in me was able to ease into the game with little issue. The controls and systems felt familiar enough that I was able to jump in with no problems, but the truth is that there's been plenty of streamlining under the hood, and often for the better. Tying perks to the special system initially came off as restricting, but the more I actually progressed, the more I liked how perks are locked behind certain stats like strength and perception until they're high enough. Additionally, some of the perks are fantastic in their implementation, and I applaud Bethesda for the Idiot Savant perk, which rewards players for doing anything so long as their intelligence is low. As such, I may have to do a dumb luck run at some point. I've said time and time again that I really love choice, and I honestly think that the progression system offers that. However, there are other bigger examples of choice to be found, such as allowing the main character to be male or female, which is a first in the series. As is the case with most Bethesda RPGs, the cosmetic options available are plentiful here. It also helps that the vocal performances of Brian T. Delaney and Courtney Taylor are fantastic, and have encouraged me to do a second full playthrough just to see how the other half fares. But I digress. Choice! That's what we're talking about, and it is best shown through the newest systems to be added to the series, item customization and settlement building. Being able to tinker around and improve weaponry and armour is delightful, especially once you've scavenged enough materials. The visual changes are just as satisfying as knowing that you've just beefed up the damage or added damage resistance. Of course, certain improvements are tied to the perk tree, adding further levels of choice to the mix. Do you improve your accuracy, or learn how to add a bunch of new mods to that sweet gun you've just found? I actually relish those kind of decisions. Of course, the big new addition of settlement building is the one toy everyone was looking forward to, and I'm happy to report that, for the most part, it hits the mark. Those not wishing to enact an episode of Grand Design's Fallout Edition can go with prefab units for ease, but the choices given to the player are staggering. I was able to build multi-story complexes filled with items for my settlers really easily. This leads into the management portion of the game, which I was somewhat prepared for thanks to the surprise mobile hit Fallout Shelter, which I probably spent far more hours than I probably should have playing. This aspect is somewhat optional, so long as you can get over the guilt trip-ridden prompts saying settlements have been raided or in need of food, but the systems used to build settlements and assign settlers gets the job done. It would have been better if we'd have been given the option to leave the first-person view at this point, as there are moments where the snap mechanics get twitchy, but perseverance through the tedium is rewarded, I guess. What isn't tedious is the combat, which remains as brutal as ever. The VATS mechanic returns, but only slows down time instead of pausing it. I found this change heightened the risk of any encounter and made VATS much more of a last resort instead of the go-to for critical hit solution it had been in previous games. It also made me use it a lot less as a result, but thankfully the first-person mechanics are probably the best Bethesda have produced in its RPGs. Even the third-person view works well, although I really wish there had been an explanation for the wall lean mechanic that's actually present in the game. Likewise, conversations and interactions with NPCs have been streamlined as well, with lists replaced with 4 options, with some that are clearly indicated as flirt or charisma checks. While I enjoyed spending time with the companions that I did come across, in fact there are apparently still a few that I've yet to meet, I did however feel that earning their friendship was rather easy. In most cases, it comes off as, do something you normally do while playing, and it basically meant that my lockpicking skills had Piper idolising my character in no time. Even with the random chance of charisma checks, which is something we'll get into later, it just seemed a little too straightforward, especially with the removal of the karma system. Perhaps the biggest throwback to the Black Isle games of yesteryear is the inclusion of random events and chance in Fallout 4. NPCs and enemies can be randomly spawned across the map, along with legendary foes who drop special items. These random encounters are exactly that, so if you die and have to reload, there's a strong chance that they won't be in the same place a second time, or will be replaced by something else entirely. I liked this aspect, as it made every journey unique and encouraged me to fight instead of running away. Likewise, changing charisma checks in conversations to dice rolls adds an unpredictable element that I felt gave each success more weight to it, especially early on. Now, the question many of you are probably asking is it riddled with bugs like every other Bethesda RPG? And the answer is, well, still yes, but nowhere near as bad as it has been in past games. Cosmetic issues such as cutscenes taking place within another character's head, giving flashbacks to that Assassin's Creed Unity bug, Brahmin randomly spawning in buildings, and lip-syncing not even happening during dialogue were some of the offenders that I came across. There were more experience-breaking ones though, such as one companion being locked out of use entirely, but my biggest bugbear was with the audio levels. Some NPCs were so quiet as they spoke that I had to put in headphones just to hear them. Considering how Bethesda offered the choice of how conversations are handled now, as in by cutscene or through traditional first person, it baffled me that they didn't check that the audio levels were consistent across the two. In terms of overall engine performance, it was about as stable as you'd expect of something of Fallout 4's scale. Frame rates on the PS4 held up well until large brawls started happening between factions, or Fat Man bombs entered the equation, more to the point. Likewise, the textures on show swing between not bad to not great once you get up close, although not to the extent that the experience was ruined. In fact, the visuals were capable of delivering some superb vistas once you made it up high enough. I was somewhat taken aback as I looked over the Commonwealth from atop a skyscraper, just to give you an example. It should also be noted that this is by far the most colourful the franchise has ever been. The variety of landscapes is refreshing after a sea of greys and browns that had previously plagued the series. Even the costumes for characters are more than just rags thrown together, adding to the personality of the populace. Sure, everything may be falling apart, but there's beauty in the breakdown this time around. Another visual point of interest was the facial animations during some of the conversations. The expressions of the main characters in particular, especially when they're angry, are rather impressive, although it did make the other NPCs come off as rather unanimated by comparison. Another point of note is Einor Zur's score, which manages to complement the visuals in a fantastic manner. Resting at Sanctuary gives that feeling of hope amongst the devastation due to the music that plays there, and the tension of battles is heightened thanks to the accompanying score. I do have a criticism though, in that the outro stings after a fight ends end up being rather disjointed due to the way that the audio samples fade between each other. Ultimately though, any problems found within Fallout 4 seem to be rather insignificant when everything comes together. You can argue that the missions are effectively the same thing we've been doing for years, war never changes after all, and you can even say that the twist for the main story is fairly predictable. But it's the presentation of those missions and the satisfying combat that is sandwiched between them that makes it all so enjoyable. There's always something to discover, and thanks to the eventual repopulation of areas, always something to kill, meaning that even if you aren't interested in starting over, there's always something to do. In short, while there may be bugs and some mechanics not clearly explained, it's hard not to be in awe of the extensive open world Bethesda created with the Commonwealth. Streamlined progression, an improved narrative, and extensive customization makes Fallout 4 a serious contender for the RPG throne. Now, if you'll excuse me, there's some death claws I'm going to hunt down and then run away once I remember what a terrible idea that is.